Tonight, News 10 NBC brings you a special presentation in honor of September 11th. On the eve of this first anniversary, we'll remember the heartbreak of local victims lost. We'll share with you the stories of local heroes, those who worked tirelessly from Rochester, and others who rushed to New York City and Washington, D.C. to help victims. September 11th, 2001, and the events of the day that will forever shape our lives. Now, join Janet Lomax and Gabe Dowler as Rochester remembers.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The events of September 11th brought terrorism to our doorstep.
Tomorrow, as you know, will be the first anniversary of the attacks, a day when time seemed to stand still here in Rochester and around the nation. A day that left its physical and emotional scar on New York City. You're looking at a live picture of Ground Zero tonight. People there are getting ready for tomorrow's ceremonies that will honor the victims of September 11th. It's hard to imagine, but nearly 1 year later, funeral services are still being held for the heroes and for the victims.
And in the nation's capital, they are also remembering. Earlier today, there was a special ceremony at the Pentagon for some of the military personnel that moved back into their offices. Those offices are on the 4th floor of the giant building's outer ring, just above the spot where the hijackers crashed American Airlines Flight 77.
In Shanksville, Pennsylvania, there will be no school tomorrow. Students have the day off because of memorial services for Flight 93. National security experts believe the plane crashed here after passengers took on the hijackers. President Bush is expected to be in Shanksville tomorrow to attend the service.
In Rochester, there will be dozens of services, tributes, and candlelight vigils. We'll have information on those events for you throughout this broadcast. But first, let's revisit September 11th, 2001, and take a look at how the terrorist attacks, even though hundreds of miles away, shook Rochester.
Good morning, I'm Gabe Dowler.
And I'm Rebecca LeClaire. This is News 10 today, and here in Rochester, we are waking up to a very changed world, very different from the world that we woke up to yesterday.
It is very strange to see no one here. I mean, the airport, nothing is moving. It's pretty much a ghost town.
Well, Rebecca, there's certainly been an outpouring of support from the Rochester community. You know, if you were out there yesterday, the lines have been long since yesterday afternoon. 250 units of blood were collected at this Prince Street location yesterday and across.
Hundreds of firefighters and police, as well as 58 New York State troopers from our area, have nowhere to sleep in New York City between their shifts, so they're simply sleeping in the street.
Just the last half hour since our 5 o'clock broadcast, there have been a number of calls here to the Salvation Army of people wanting to donate money. One very generous person.
Good evening from Washington, D.C. Here on Capitol Hill, congressional members got back to work today, passing resolutions condemning yesterday's hideous acts of terror.
Untold numbers of our comrades have been hurt or killed. Just want to come down and do whatever we can to help out in any way possible.
You cannot forget the instant you learned about the terrorist attacks. We asked people in Rochester what they were doing the morning of September 11th.
I just turned in the car, and then I saw it on TV because they had it on the TV out in school, and then I went home and watched it for about 8 hours.
I watched it unfold on the news. I was, shocked at what I saw.
September 11th, I was sitting at the Student Center desk, answering the phone, and a student ran in and said, "We're being invaded and we're being bombed," and they were crying. And I got up and I ran to the TV. I couldn't believe it. It was like something happening in another country.
Those are the kind of moments that will stay with us for a lifetime.
Definitely. 2 Rochesterians experienced the terror of the Trade Center attacks. They were there, and it is a day they'll never forget. Let's go live to Brian Martin in New York City for their story. Brian?
Well, Janet, the towers were about to collapse. The city was in shock. And for 2 men from Rochester, the morning of September 11th quickly became a race to get out of New York City. It was a tougher race than they would have ever imagined.
Edward Schill and Jerry Fersinetti were attending a financial conference that morning right down the street from the World Trade Center when they found out what happened.
I looked to the gentleman I was with, my colleague, and said, we're getting out of here.
But on that morning, leaving New York was much easier said than done.
Our first game plan was to try to get a taxi cab to the Albany airport.
Like many others, Schill and Fersinetti couldn't get a cab. Then they came upon a limousine with a driver named Jose.
This guy came out of nowhere, basically was watching us flounder, trying to get a cab. And I remember he said he had been working since I think 3 in the morning, driving people around. He had like 10 minutes left on his shift.
He agreed to take the men to the Albany airport for $300. They got in the limo at 9:30 a.m.
Jose was just fantastic. He was taking us through parts of the city that unless you had driven down there for 30 years, you'd never know where you were.
But their luck would quickly change.
It seemed like every time we came up to a bridge, they'd close it 5 minutes before we got there.
If we had been 5 minutes earlier, we'd have gone right to Albany. They essentially shut off all the arteries going out of the city.
They arrived at the Throngs Neck Bridge in Queens around 11:30 that morning. Ed, Jerry, and their driver, Jose, sat on the bridge for 7 hours.
Jose could have left us. He said his house was about 3 miles the other way and traffic was wide open going there. And he could have left 2 guys from upstate New York standing in suits in the middle of the Queens Expressway.
But he didn't. And when the bridge reopened around 6:30 that night, Jose took the men to Albany. 12 hours after picking them up in downtown Manhattan, Jose left Albany, heading back to his family in New York City.
Probably the biggest upside surprise that I've had in my life was somebody that could have bailed on us in a minute, thinking of himself and his family, and instead he agreed to take us on, and he was with us all day long. So quite a special individual in my mind.
An individual who, for these 2 men, gave a new meaning to life.
Kind of brings a focus to what's important. People don't really remember what kind of work you did, but they sure remember your kids and your family and your ties. So.
Jerry and Ed rented a car in Albany. They made it back to Rochester around midnight. The limo driver, Jose, he made it back to his driveway 6:30 a.m. the next morning. We'll hear his incredible story tomorrow. Reporting live in New York City, Brian Martin, News 10 NBC.
Brian, how did Jerry and Ed feel about New York City after the events of 9/11?
Kind of interesting, Janet. They had always thought of New York City as kind of a barren, a very cold place. After their experience on 9/11, they had a new appreciation, a new understanding for the people of this wonderful city here.
Filled with a lot of warm people. All right, Brian, thanks.
Absolutely.
And we'll go back to Brian in New York City again a bit later in the show. Brian will introduce us to a local man who works for Harris Beach. Harris Beach, as you know, the law firm, was one of the companies with offices in the World Trade Center. The company lost several employees.
Jeffrey Wicks of Brighton is a lawyer who tried a case in downtown Manhattan shortly after the attacks. He describes the scene near Ground Zero.
On every single corner, south of Canal Street, along Broadway, were about 100 people just staring silently. Nobody said a word, and every one of them was just sitting, sometimes with a camera, sometimes with a video camera, but they were just all sitting in unison, not saying a word, just staring westward, where the smoke was still rising.
The scenes were also disturbing for the thousands of rescue workers and volunteers working at Ground Zero. Many of those people were from our area. Berkeley Breen sat down with a few of these heroic Rochesterians to talk with them about the images that are still so fresh in their minds.
My name is Mark O'Donnell with the New York State Police, and I spent over 7 weeks down at the World Trade Center.
This is what Mark O'Donnell saw. This is where he was.
You could see the smoke from the George Washington Bridge, and as you got closer to Ground Zero, you could begin to smell a certain odor, to see the buildings that stood so tall and were such an eyepiece for New York. To see them crumbled down to boulders and pieces of cement and metal was devastating.
Mark O'Donnell searched cars, tunnels, and bridges. He manned the checkpoints, but his toughest duty was at the funerals.
So you listen to the widows, the children of the people that were killed, and in this profession you kind of visualize yourself in those types of instances, and those were the most difficult times.
Hardly anyone else here got as close as Mark O'Donnell. Hardly.
I'm Syed Ahmed Mustafa. I'm a nationally registered paramedic with Monroe Ambulance, and I was at Ground Zero for approximately 22 hours.
Ahmed Mustafa got called to duty September 14th. These are some of his pictures.
The images in my head of being there will be there forever. And you'll be going somewhere, you'll smell someone's exhaust, you'll smell some soot at a fire, and boom, you're right there. You're standing in the rubble.
Ahmed Mustafa says the emotion didn't hit him until he returned home. He received the State Senate Liberty Award, an award he says he accepts on behalf of all the local volunteers. It has been a year since Mark O'Donnell and Ahmed Mustafa got the call of their lives, and after a year, it still brings them pause.
The world is a different place. I mean, I have a few small children at home, and the world they're going to grow up in is different than the world you and I grew up in.
And it was an experience that I certainly did not want to experience, but we were sent down there to perform a certain duty, and we did it. And as far as learning anything from it, is can never be too careful, and we hope nothing like this ever happens again.
On September 11th, air traffic control worked frantically to get dozens of planes on the ground, fearful of more hijackings. Some of those planes were diverted to Rochester's airport.
That's right. Wendy Wright was there as officials were grounding planes and shutting down operations. She joins us from the airport with a look back. Wendy?
September 2002, and it's pretty much business as usual here at Rochester International Airport. And when I walked through the airport on the day of the terrorist attacks, it was also calm here, except it was an eerie calm. The boards showed all flights canceled. The TV showed nothing but news of the horrible events unfolding. Here's part of the report I filed September 11th, 2001 from Rochester International Airport.
I sat on the tarmac just as we were taking off, and I said to myself, something's wrong. This is not a good day to fly.
An understatement from one woman who was in the air when the terror in our country began. Elaine Whitfield Sharp is from Boston, Massachusetts. She says her plane was on the tarmac next to the one that hit the World Trade Center. She remembers the faces of the passengers.
But I knew something was wrong when we were flying in the wrong direction. You could see all this black smoke over Manhattan. It was just engulfed in black smoke.
Buses were brought in to transport the passengers on board the planes that were diverted to Rochester.
Oh, I'm just really freaked out. I don't hardly ever travel. I'm stuck here with no money, no idea what to do.
Pilot announced that there was an international threat against the United States, and we would be landing in Rochester.
And here in Rochester, 1 year later, there are changes here at the airport, changes in security. Immediately following September 11th, security was beefed up. The Army National Guard was deployed here. Director of Aviation Terrence Slaybaugh says it was a good move because it helped to regain the public's confidence.
Now we have been able to replace the functions that the Guard was assisting us with full-time sheriff's deputies. And basically we have deputies now who have a presence at the security checkpoints the entire time that they're open.
Mr. Slaybaugh says he never forgets the reason for the changes. On September 11th last year, as he shut down his airport, I spoke with him and he gave me these thoughts.
Forget my career here as an American. You know, not since the bombing of Pearl Harbor do I think something like this has happened in our country. And I mean, obviously you have to think about the Americans that obviously lost their lives today.
And 1 year later,
I still think that the events of that day, the tragic events of that day, overshadow anything we can do that would be significant at the airports.
Mr. Slaybaugh's words of comfort to you on this solemn anniversary. He promises to be vigilant at working to keep Rochester's airport safe. Reporting from Rochester International Airport, Wendy Wright, News 10 NBC.
The war on terrorism has provided schools with a unique challenge.
Last year, history unfolded in front of students' eyes. This year, students depend on newspapers and the internet for information because textbooks simply aren't up to date. More on that story straight ahead.
In a world of change, there's only one constant. Chevy's complete line of SUVs, with more models than anyone else. From Avalanche to Trailblazer, Tahoe to Suburban. There's a Chevy that's ready to tackle just about anything. Take that, Mother Nature. Chevy SUVs, only at your local Chevy dealer.
Great news. It's frosted!
Like things frosted, introducing new frosted mini Chex. The simple goodness of Chex, only smaller, with just the right amount of frosting. New frosted mini Chex. They're frosted.
At Floors, the selection of quality floor covering options is endless.
If we took the time to show you everything that Floors has to offer, this commercial would last for 6.5 days. Floors, where you get the absolute best floor covering selection at the guaranteed lowest price. The fact is, nobody does floors better than Floors.
Floors, now with 2 locations, West Henrietta Road and Route 96 in Victor.
When I wear black, even a little dandruff shows, and my old dandruff shampoo just wasn't cutting it. So I switched to Selsun Blue Moisturizing Shampoo. Doctor recommended for flakes and itch, with aloe and moisturizers for healthier hair and scalp. Never wear black without the blue. Selsun Blue.
I want to get the weight off.
And keep it off.
Introducing all-natural Dexatrim Results. Nutrition-based results combines antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, 6 natural energy sources, and fat burners.
The weight stayed off.
I finally did it.
New Dexatrim Results. Look better, feel better getting there.
The events that unfolded on September 11th changed history forever. The war on terrorism immediately became a classroom lesson.
And 1 year later, many teachers from grade school through college have brought the attack on America into their curriculum. Education reporter Elizabeth Chernak explains how students in Rochester will remember.
1 year ago, in classrooms like this, students watched the attack on America on televisions in classrooms. 1 year later, they're reading about it and discussing the impact in class.
Patriotism has skyrocketed.
It also has made people kind of paranoid.
September 11th changed how students and many teachers approach their lessons.
Raise taxes. There's going to be some impact. There's a cost to everything we do.
In this economics class, Brighton High School students are talking about the cost of airport security.
Now they can see it very clearly, and how events in one part of the world have an immediate impact in the rest of the world.
Students are getting their information from newspapers, magazines, and the internet. Most public schools don't have textbooks that cover September 11th. These students in Fairport are using a history book that only goes up to the 1996 re-election of President Clinton. Schools try to use books for at least 5 years, and new ones need to be budgeted a year in advance.
It's very expensive.
But even at the cost of $50 each, Fairport is now looking to buy books for all grades that cover the war on terrorism.
We always want to ask ourselves the question, is what we're presenting to our students age appropriate?
Fairport's goal is to get the books in classrooms next September. Like our public schools, most colleges in Rochester have added at least one class, let it be history, religion, or even biology, that's incorporated the events of September 11th. Unlike our public schools, professors have been able to change their reading list, so they're adding books like this that are specifically about the attack on America.
Books are coming out, but with the anniversary coming up, there are all kinds of articles.
Susan Nowak is a religious studies professor at Nazareth College. She added the events of September 11th to her curriculum immediately.
People's ideas about Islam needed to be addressed.
1 year later, college classes addressing September 11th are full, and students still have questions.
What would make someone think that a God has told them to go and kill all these Americans?
Whether it's college or high school, teachers and students anticipate the war on terrorism will be part of classroom lessons for years to come.
This is a first for our country, and it's very scary, and I think it's definitely going to be a big part of the curriculum.
How it's going to affect our curriculum 5 or 10 years down the road is going to be hard to say. I think the events over the next 2 or 3 years will help us focus.
Some schools opted not to change their curriculum, but they plan to use class time tomorrow to discuss what happened 1 year ago. Reporting from Brighton, education reporter Elizabeth Chernak, News 10 NBC.
Jeremy Glick, a 1993 graduate of the University of Rochester, was on the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania.
That plane was headed to Washington, D.C., but passengers are credited with stopping the terrorists and ending the suicide mission early. Glick's fraternity at the U of R put this memorial next to a statue of fallen heroes in World War I and II. The Alpha Delta Phi fraternity also started a memorial fund in his honor. The money is for U of R students in the Greek system who need financial aid.
Actually, while he was here, he had talked to some of his brothers in the fraternity about trying to establish some way of supporting students who needed a little financial aid, a little boost while they were at school. So I think he would love it.
The fund has raised $20,000 during this past year, If you want to donate, send checks to the Jeremy Glick Memorial Fund at the University of Rochester Gift Office, 30 Wallace Hall, Rochester, New York, 14627.
Tomorrow morning at 8, this memorial wall at MCC will be dedicated. Students helped create it and raised money for its construction. There's an open space where the two twin towers once stood. It's situated so that at 8:46 in the morning, the time when the first plane struck, the sun will slice through that space, creating a shadow.
The George Eastman House is honoring the anniversary of 9/11.
We'll tell you how you can take part in that tribute just ahead. Plus, an Air Force sergeant from Geneva talks about being at the Pentagon right after the attacks.
On September 11th, our nation witnessed horrible acts of destruction and terror. But as we have so many times in our history, our country came together. We began to heal by laying the groundwork for tomorrow, by remembering those we lost, by respecting the human spirit of those who sacrificed to help others, rebuilding to make us stronger, to stand even taller. The Miller Brick Memorial, honoring our heroes and celebrating the spirit of America.
Oh boy, she's gonna pick me. The casserole dish. Must be something special going on tonight. Like au gratin potatoes with Betty. Oh, another long evening of slow-baked potato perfection. What? Only 20 minutes? Oh, Betty, how could you possibly pack all our cheesy, dreamy potato-liciousness into just...
Betty Crocker oven-baked potatoes. 10 varieties, now faster than ever.
20 minutes. Betty, now we can do this more often.
How to turn an ordinary old day into Old El Paso Taco Night filled with Taco Night. With the Old El Paso Taco Dinner Kit has what it takes to transform an ordinary old day into... Got it? Good. Old El Paso. Ordinary day. Taco Night.
Hey, just because you're grown up, you don't have to act so grown up. There you go. Yeah, man, that's better. Yeah, baby. Okay, now try this, man. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Think it's kid stuff? Nah, it's cinnamon sugar swirled over squares of wheat and rice. There's a new you already. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It's the adult thing to do.
Now buy your favorite General Mills cereal and get a coupon for a select box free. Clean up in aisle 3.
When news of the crash at the Pentagon hit the airwaves, a Geneva mom waited frantically for word of her son. Staff Sergeant Robert Rose worked at the Pentagon. Brett Davidson talked with him 2 days after the attack in Washington and caught up with him again recently.
Outside the Pentagon, this is
Air Force Staff Sergeant Robert Rose expected September 11th to be just another day at work. His job to patrol the halls of the Pentagon and provide protection to the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
It's a different world now. It will always be.
Nearly a year after I first spoke with Rose on that chilly September day outside the Pentagon last year, I caught up with him again, this time at his parents' home in Geneva.
I was basically getting ready for work. I was coming for my haircut, and I was getting in my uniform, and an hour later I was going to work. So it makes you think, you know.
You could have very easily been in that hallway.
Easily.
Instinctively, after hearing of the attack at the Pentagon, Rose rushed from his home to the burning defense headquarters to help escort people out.
I'd say maybe about a foot ahead of you could see, and it was just, the smoke was just, you could barely breathe as it was, let alone see, and that was the whole Pentagon.
I asked him to call me every night when he got home because I just wanted to make sure his spirits, you know, kept up and stuff, because I knew he was going to be facing a grim, you know, job, seeing stuff there. And
his mother, Barbara Rose, says she prayed a lot in the days following September 11th. Do you ever think about the fact that he could have been in that particular area, the Pentagon, at that particular moment?
I do. I went to church that night, and we had a vigil here, and on my phone's answering machine, we had about 22 messages from friends that knew of my son's employment there at the Pentagon, and were saying prayers, and it just made me think how lucky we were.
Staff Sergeant Rose and his unit were recently recognized for their efforts on September 11th. Now stationed in Cape Cod, he says his thoughts will be on the Pentagon. And on September 11th, how will you commemorate that day?
Just reflecting on the past year. Try to do a lot of thinking.
And there is a lot to think about for Sergeant Rose, for his family, and for a nation. Brett Davidson, News 10 NBC.
The George Eastman House is hosting a special September 11th tribute. The exhibit is made up of photos and video from September 11th and its aftermath. The photos were taken by professional photographers from the local and national media. 10 NBC's own photojournalist Brad Cowan has a picture on display. It's a silhouette he captured of a local firefighter at work. The display is on until January 20th. Tomorrow you can visit the Eastman House for free. There will also be a candlelight vigil at the museum starting at 7 o'clock.
The Muslim community of Rochester is holding a vigil tonight to mark 9/11.
And we will take you there just ahead. Plus, find out how local Muslims are trying to educate the community on what they say is the true Islam, a religion of peace, not terror.
Hi, grape nuts, please.
You know, it'd take 4 bowls of grape nuts to equal the B vitamins in just 1 bowl of total.
4 bowls. Dig in, Lumpy. Special K, please.
That'd take 16 bowls to equal the zinc in total.
16 bowls. Eat up, sweetie.
Shredded wheat?
40 bowls to equal the calcium in total.
40 bowls. Chow down, big boy.
You need Total. It's got a 100% daily value of 12 vitamins and minerals. No other cereal comes close.
Total, please.
Totals for me. We're out of bowls.
Total Raisin Bran. What are you getting for breakfast?
Dad, you've been saying yes a lot lately. You must be selling tons of cars and trucks.
That's right, McKenna. That's why Mallier is becoming the fastest Chevy Olds Buick dealership in Monroe County.
Dad, didn't Mallier just win awards for Chevy Olds Buick?
That's right. Price is just part of it. Customer service is the key, and we work hard at it every day.
Nice job, Dad, and thanks for saying yes to me. I love my new car.
Mallier, we always say yes.
Clover's big September sale is heating up with savings up to 60% off on over 100 vent-free gas fireplaces, starting at just $449. A complete fireplace with wood mantle is only $569. Over 500 fireplace gas logs by Rasmussen, Hargrove, and many more, starting at only $189. Many scratch and dent items are priced below wholesale, including outdoor casual furniture. Get a 3- or 4-person hot tub for just $18.88. Leather pocket pool tables from $12.99. Save up to 60% on floor model and new above-ground pool, only at Clover.
Shattered lives, broken dreams, fear, despair. For many women, it's a never-ending cycle. The YWCA of Rochester and Monroe County, helping women and families to overcome barriers to stability and success.
The best thing I can say about the YWCA School Experience Program is that someone is really there for you.
I live in an environment where the services are right at my door.
The YWCA, renewing women, rebuilding lives.
Members of the American Muslim Council of Greater Rochester are holding a special event tonight to mark the anniversary of September 11th. Kristen Salome has more on their unique perspective of this somber day.
Muslim Americans felt the pain of September 11th, as all Americans did. But the fact that the hijackers of those planes were Muslim was an added blow. The people in this room here have worked extra hard since that day to teach the community about what they say is the true Islam, a religion of peace, not terror.
Local Muslims say they had yet to recover from the attack on their country when the attack on their religion began. The Islamic Center of Greater Rochester took the brunt of local outrage over the terrorist attacks. Its spiritual leader, Dr. Muhammad Shafiq, remembers that morning.
The first thing which I entered here, somebody was calling, hell with you, Muslim, get out of here. And some abusive language. I did not pick it up. I picked up the second phone again, it was something like that.
Muslim American leaders were quick to condemn the attacks as other religious leaders stood by their side in solidarity. But few Muslims were there to hear. Many avoided coming to the mosque for weeks, even months.
I think predominantly the mood was one of fear. That would really be the general way to describe, especially how parents were feeling in terms of their children.
With heavy police presence at the mosque and attempts to reach out to the community, Rochester's Muslims have kept conflict to a minimum. But whether at the airport or at the hands of law enforcement, Shafiq says more subtle forms of discrimination are a threat.
You are discriminating at this time more than 1 billion, means 1/4 of the world population. That is going to weaken the foundation of our country.
Nevertheless, he and other Muslims do find a silver lining in the cloud that still hangs over their religion.
It generated a lot of curiosity as well about Islam. So we got an opportunity as well to talk to people about Islam, what really Islam is.
There have been a lot of people who have been overwhelmingly kind and really gone out of their way to say, you know, it's nice to meet you. You know, we know that Muslims aren't like this.
Tonight, the American Muslim Council is thanking people who have stood by them in the last year with the hopes of continued good relations in the future. In Brighton, Kristen Salome, News 10, NBC.
Local researchers are trying to solve the mystery of a World Trade Center dust.
We'll explain that just ahead. Plus, a Rochester law firm with ties to New York City remembers 9/11.
Jimmy, I'd like it if the yard was raked before I get back.
Totino's pizza rolls are so easy. Kids can make them on their own.
I thought Mom said rake the yard.
That's what I'm doing. Here, take these outside. Big pizza flavor, stuffed into a bite-sized roll. Yep. Cool.
Jimmy, how'd you do all that?
No sweat. Yep. Totino's. It's how kids help themselves. Now in 2 new flavors.
You want half?
Sure. Hey, your half's bigger.
Yeah, you're right.
Grand's flaky layers.
How's that?
Big enough to share.
Some days we're in slow motion.
Crescent's, something special for Sunday dinner. So flaky, and now incredibly richer and more buttery.
Many local companies were directly impacted by the tragic losses of the World Trade Center attacks.
Local law firm Harris Beach is one of those companies. Brian Martin joins us live from New York City with more. Brian?
Well, Gabe and Janet, it has been a year since Rochester law firm Harris Beach lost workers here in New York City. Like so many other victims, the firm and its managing partner are looking back while trying to stay focused on the future.
The last year has been a whirlwind for us.
The morning of September 11th, 2001, 50 employees of Harris Beach showed up to their newly refinished law offices on the 85th floor of the World Trade Center South Tower. Gunther Berman, the firm's managing partner, was getting ready to leave his Rochester home. That's when he heard and saw something on a morning news program.
Showed the first, the plane hit the first building. At that point, I immediately called the office and got the receptionist, and they said there was a bomb in the other building. I said, no, an airplane hit the other building. Get out.
The Harris Beach employees made it down to the 33rd floor before the second plane slammed into the South Tower. 44 of the 50 employees somehow made it out alive. 6 workers didn't. 2 of them, lawyers who had been with the company less than a month.
It's been a long year dealing with not only the issues associated with the people that we lost and kind of thinking a little more differently about where we're going to go and how we're going to approach things, but you know, also kind of looking at what's happened to the country and how things have changed in that period of time.
A year later, a sign of new life. Crews planted this 20-foot tall tree at the company's Rochester headquarters, honoring those who died that day.
We've been in a real rebuilding process for the last year, and about 4 months ago we found some new space at 805 3rd Avenue.
A new tree, some new office space, and a new outlook on the future.
Despite all of the horror and tragedy associated with it, you know, we, like everyone else, we believe we need to move on, and remember the people that we lost and the tragedy that was associated with those losses. But, you know, man, and particularly New Yorkers, have this ability to get back up on their feet and move ahead, and that's what we're trying to do there.
Harris Beach offices across New York State will hold special ceremonies tomorrow morning. The company's offices here in New York City will be closed tomorrow. Reporting live in New York City, Brian Martin, News 10 NBC.
All right, Brian, thank you. Mike Kaufman, who was from Honey Eye Falls, remembers 9/11 with great sadness. Mike works for Morgan Stanley here in Rochester. 8 of his New York City colleagues died at Morgan Stanley's World Trade Center offices.
One of the people that we lost was only died because he was the last one out trying to get everybody else out of the building. And he succeeded in what he was doing, but gave up his life as a result. And it's a day that none of us really want to remember.
Mr. Kaufman says that several people from the Rochester office were in Tower 2 that day, but they made it out safely. Morgan Stanley was the largest tenant in the World Trade Center.
When the Twin Towers fell, they created a cloud of dust that's never been seen before. With so much going on at the time, most people didn't stop to think if that dust could be dangerous to their health. Medical reporter Robin Duane joins us with more on how local researchers are now trying to solve the mystery of the World Trade Center dust.
I'm here at the University of Rochester Medical Center inside the labs where researchers here have teamed up with New York University for this study. The goal is to find out if all of that dust from the World Trade Center could pose a toxic risk to all of the people who were exposed.
Who can forget the images? 2 dark plumes of smoke hanging over lower Manhattan. Dust covered everything.
This is one of the samples from the high chair. And so there's 20 milligrams of this.
That dust is now sitting in dozens of test tubes in a lab at the University of Rochester Medical Center.
Other dust samples that we
Jacob
know
Finkelstein and his team are considered the top dust experts in the world. They have been selected to analyze what's left of the World Trade Center.
Whenever any issue comes up relating to what the effect would be of something inhaled, a lot of people naturally think that we're one of those places that can do the work.
The particles are both large and small material that could be deeply inhaled into the lungs. Researchers need to find out if the dust could pose a health risk to people living in New York City.
We also think that this dust might, and I emphasize might, have some effect on the ability of a person to cope with an infection. So if they were exposed to dust and then got the flu, their flu might be a little worse, or they might have been more susceptible to the flu.
Amazingly, just one day after the World Trade Center attack, scientists began collecting dust samples from all over the New York City area, from parked cars, windowsills, children's toys, and even dishes.
We've never seen anything like this before. Lots of people exposed to massive amounts of material.
Finkelstein says most of the dust is comprised of cement, electronic devices, steel, and aluminum.
Based on what I already know, I don't think that they're a significant health risk to anyone, other than the most highly exposed initial workers. But as with anything else, we really don't know.
The $1.2 million project is expected to be wrapped up next year with results available by April. Reporting from the University of Rochester Medical Center, medical reporter Robin DeWind, News 10 NBC.
Local hospitals have spent the last year beefing up their disaster plans in case of a terrorist attack. At Rochester General Hospital, a decontamination tent has been purchased, along with special suits which would allow emergency teams to treat people infected with anthrax or smallpox. Rochester received federal funding for the upgrades. All local hospitals are also connected to a community telephone and email system. Doctors have also been educated in bioterrorism. Hospitals say in the past emergency crews prepared for a radiation accident, but now they prepare for terrorism.
Well, an Eastman School graduate lived just a block away from the World Trade Center.
We'll tell you about the decision that saved her life coming up.
Okay, guys, what sounds good for dinner tonight?
I don't know. Something.
Nothing. Mexican. That'd be fun.
Thinking Mexican tonight? Think Hamburger Helper. We've added authentic Old El Paso seasonings to create 4 festive flavors like new cheesy enchilada.
Really good.
This is good.
Try all 4. Hamburger Helper, helping you make a great meal.
Tonight. At Floors, the selection of quality floor covering options is endless. If we took the time to show you everything that Floors has to offer, this commercial would last for 6.5 days. Floors, where you get the absolute best floor covering selection at the guaranteed lowest price. The fact is, nobody does floors better than Floors.
Floors, now with 2 locations, West Henrietta Road and Route 96 in Victor.
How to turn an ordinary old day into Old El Paso Taco Night filled with Taco Night. With the Old El Paso Taco Dinner Kit has what it takes to transform an ordinary old day into... Got it? Good. Old El Paso, ordinary day. Taco Night.
I thought dating again would be tough.
He's cute. Is he younger than me?
Maybe getting rid of my gray hair was just what I needed.
Just for men. More than a hair color, it's a hair rejuvenator. Gray hair is shampooed away in 5 easy minutes. Vitamin Enriched Just for Men brings back a thicker, healthier, natural look.
I wonder how I did tonight.
Would you like to come in?
Just for Men, the Rejuvenator.
An Eastman School of Music grad lived just a block away from the World Trade Center. Now Lisa Tarantino is using her talents to help people heal after the attacks. Brett Davidson has her story.
Make phone calls. I had a roommate, one who worked in the first tower, one who worked in the second tower.
Lisa Tarantino is trying to move forward.
I would try to say.
The Eastman School of Music graduate is an aspiring singer, model, and fashion artist. Her career was on the fast track. A recording contract seemed imminent, and she was getting work as a model. And then the World Trade Center was attacked.
I lived for a year and 2 months down there, 1 block away from the World Trade Centers.
It was only because she had a meeting in Westchester County that she wasn't near the towers when they fell. She had decided to go up the night before. The fateful decision may have saved her life.
I would have walked my friends to work that morning at about 8:45, had a bagel and a coffee with them, walked them up to the offices, and then gone to work.
After hearing of the attack, Lisa tried to get back to her apartment, but the area had been barricaded. She could see, hear, and smell the devastation.
People running and screaming away from the area, people dropping to their knees in the street crying, not sure what to do because they had loved ones who worked in the buildings, and no one was answering their cell phones. It was absolutely terrifying.
One of her roommates died in the World Trade Center. She also lost a close friend.
It's such a shame. Very, very bright guy. Very bright, very promising. And we start all over again.
Starting over for Lisa Tarantino meant coming home to Rochester, where she tried to throw herself into her work. But she found it was hard to focus until she used her talent as therapy. In May, she performed as a soloist at famed Severance Hall in her hometown of Cleveland at a tribute for the victims of 9/11. It would be an emotional night.
One thing when you're singing America the Beautiful, and they had this wonderful, wonderful film in the background, and I can see in the plexiglass at the back of the auditorium people marching over the barricades with their guns and their rifles off to war, and the buildings as they caught on fire and they fell to the ground. And I almost didn't make it through. But I don't think anybody noticed. I think Cleveland was incredibly cathartic for me. I think it really helped me deal with everything and get it out of my system and move forward.
Tarantino says for her, September 11th will bring back difficult memories, but will also offer hope. She says it has made her more determined to make it in the industry because she knows others who will never get the same opportunity to live their dreams.
Shining
Mark Davidson, News 10 NBC.
Sports was impacted greatly by the terrorist attacks.
Games were pushed back and stadiums were empty. But sports also provided an opportunity for healing and displays of patriotism. We'll have more on that just ahead.
There is a difference between being injured and being injured at work.
If you've been hurt on the job, you need to see your doctor, you need to tell your employer that you were hurt at work, and you need to call an attorney who knows the workers' compensation law.
At Connors & Ferris, we are workers' comp attorneys. Call for this free brochure and learn how to protect yourself and your family.
Connors & Ferris, committed to serving Rochester's injured workers. Call 262-COMP today.
You can blame it on diet, hormones, or stress. Or you can face it. You can fight it. You can do something about hereditary hair thinning now with Women's Rogaine, with the only ingredient proven to regrow hair in women. The sooner you start, the better your chance of success. So start early. Rogaine works. The sooner, the better.
It's Honey Nut Chex Mix. And honey, it's a total buzz. Honey Nut Chex Mix. Get into the mix.
I'm a car guy, but I think, first of all, I'm a people guy. I'm not very good at pressure. If anything, there's probably not enough pressure in my store. But it seems to work. The biggest base of customer we have is our repeat buyer. So I think we're doing something right. What's right for you is going to be right for us. We want to satisfy your expectations. And I think we're good at that.
After the terrorist attacks, getting back to a normal routine just didn't seem quite right.
Well, part of that everyday life was sports locally and nationally. Rich Funky joins us with more. Rich?
Gabe and Janet, the terrorist attacks had a huge impact on the sports world last year. Games, quite simply, were not a priority. The need to grieve far exceeded any need to compete. Baseball paused for 6 days after the attacks, and when the games returned, they were awash in red, white, and blue. The Yankees' spirited drive to the World Series helped New York City begin to heal. And it was the same for pro football. The entire schedule, including the Super Bowl, was pushed back 1 week. On the high school level, Section 5 decided that football and soccer games would provide communities an opportunity to pray together and show their patriotism. Mark Gruba and Rick Hager filed these reports on Friday night, September 14th, 3 days after the attacks.
A sense of community and patriotism tonight in Brockport, where the Blue Devils hosted Penfield. For many, the chance to sing and cheer, providing an emotional release.
I'm really excited. Cheering is a fun experience for me and everybody else, especially with guys on the team.
We felt that we could capture two things here. One is to bring our students here, bring them together to be with us and to reflect on what happened, and we tried to accomplish that in our pregame ceremony. And the other that we're trying to do is also at the same time bring some normalcy back to their life.
On high school fields all across the nation tonight, the home team colors were red, white, and blue. At McQuaid, the Knights gave up a long touchdown to Edison's Jason Colson, but they gained so much more in defeat.
They'll remember that tragedy, but they'll also remember the country coming together and them coming together as a team after. I think it's one of those memories that I'll have, maybe a good memory that goes with this horrible, horrible week.
A candlelight vigil, providing perspective afterward, punctuated by a bonfire, signifying unity and strength. Years from now, people won't remember who won or lost tonight. Instead, they'll think of this, that our children, playing the All-American game, sent a clear signal that our way of life will persevere. I'm Mark Ruba. For more on tonight's football action, we send it to Rick Hager, who covered the Cal-Mum-Leroy game.
Cal-Mum's Hamilton Field was decorated with flags. Fans were asked to donate to the Red Cross.
Thanks so much.
Players walked onto the field very subdued. Could these two small-town communities really be ready for a game?
The events of the past week have had a profound effect on all of us. The two communities of Leroy and Caledonia-Mumford have a long history of caring and concern for their children. And that's why we're here tonight.
The Cal-Mum Varsity Chorus sang the national anthem.
It's really hard watching it on TV. That's all that's been on, so do what we can.
Help us to play hard, mean, aggressive, but clean. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. After they kicked off, the mood changed. And for 2.5 hours on this cool fall night, the focus was on football.
Felt we should have played because we should get our minds off this tragedy.
What happened was just terrible, but I mean, life's got to go on.
The teachers, the school community, and the sports community helps put some of that junk on the back burner.
And everybody's touched. We had a player that played for us back in '92, Matt Vincent, and his sister's missing. So, you know, it touches everybody in the country. But I think it's important for us to not let terrorism and those type of people dictate to us the way that Americans are going to live.
Rick Hager, News 10, NBC.
You know, there is always debate about the appropriate time for games to resume after tragedy, but it's as personal as grief itself. The timetable is different for everybody. Most sporting events begin with the national anthem, and that's important. Sports has given large numbers of people the opportunity to come together to show their patriotism this past year. Over 72,000 sang America the Beautiful at the Bills-Jets game on Sunday. And tomorrow, baseball games will stop at every ballpark at exactly 9:11 p.m. for a moment of silence, which will be followed by a video presentation to honor those who died and those who have helped us rebuild.
We all find ourselves on the same team.
We do.
Rich, thanks. A New York City police officer gained national attention after 9/11 because of his singing voice.
Officer Daniel Rodriguez brought his goodwill and patriotism to Rochester. I'll tell you about his visit just ahead.
Join Jiva Theater and celebrate 30 years of unforgettable moments.
Jiva Theater presents Cookin' at the Cookery, the music and times of Alberta Hunter, on stage September 3rd through October 6th. Cookin' at the Cookery is a blues and jazz-packed celebration of the life of this legend.
Take a look through any window, take a step through any door. Does your home need something better? Is it time for something more? Pace windows and doors will improve your home. Season in and season out. You'll clearly see the quality. Inside and out, everything's looking better.
Once again, YoPlay invites you to join in our Save Lids to Save Lives program. For every pink lid you send in, we'll donate 10 cents to the Susan G. Komen Foundation, up to $750,000. Together, we can lick breast cancer. YoPlay, it is so good.
Announcing the incredible $2 million accessory sell-off at Value City Furniture.
This week, take an additional 50 to 75% off our already low prices on selected accessories from around the world.
Save on lamps, candle holders, picture frames, artwork, and much more.
Terrific savings in every aisle on thousands of great items for your home.
The $2 million accessory sell-off this week at Value City Furniture.
Don't miss it.
It's safe to say that in many ways, September 11th changed our lives. We spoke with some local residents outside the Rochester Stock Exchange, a restaurant in the First Federal Building downtown.
It happened too easy. They just came in and did what they had to do at sacrifice of thousands of people. And I wonder if it could happen again. You know, even with the security beefing up and everything, you just wonder, getting on a plane, going to work every day.
You think life will ever be the same again?
No, I don't. I don't, because there's always that concern now that something like this could happen again. It's still not done. It's still not done. Now it could be biological. So we're not done with this.
I was never a person to take things for granted, generally, but I think that society got a little complacent, and I think people generally took things for granted. And then you wake up one morning, you watch the news, and you hear about the events, and then you sit back and you thank God to yourself that your family's okay. But you know, a couple hundred miles away, that there are families that aren't okay, and their lives have changed instantaneously.
And hopefully, we've learned to always be eternally vigilant to protect our liberty and appreciate life.
It's just, you gotta live your life every day to the fullest, and you never know what's gonna happen, you know? It changed my life because, I mean, it was so close. It happened in New York, and it was so close to home.
Well, for me, it was a big wake-up call. I never realized how vulnerable we were, and I think we take our safety for granted. I think we need to really rally around our government's efforts to build a safe infrastructure to protect our borders and keep us safe.
On a personal note, after 9/11, I found myself thinking a lot more about life in general, about choices, inasmuch as we are able in this free society to make choices. In addition, I know what it's like to have your home bombed and to fear your own government, as I did in my native Hungary under communism. So this past year, I've been more compelled to say out loud, see how lucky we are as Americans that something like 9/11 doesn't happen all the time. It's up to us to make sure that it stays that way.
Well said. Well, music has been a way for many people to express themselves, their emotions after the September 11th tragedy. New York City police officer Daniel Rodriguez gained national attention because of his singing voice. Rodriguez sang at dozens of funerals for fellow officers and firefighters in New York. He came to Rochester in August for a concert with the RPO. And when he visited our area, Rodriguez met with our firefighters on East Avenue, and he shook hands with them.
Tonight we leave you with a special performance he did just for us.
Thank you for joining us tonight as we remember the victims and heroes of September 11th. Good night.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, our home.